Presented per Pat Smith, along with Coach Bill Clark, Landrum Roberts, Damian Mitchell. On this beautiful game week, Coach, we have finally made it. We've actually got tackle football coming up this week.
It's hard to believe, but it's here.
Do you want to go back a couple weeks? Start over?
No, I think we're good where we are. I think it's time.
For the players, you're dialing in. You're excited about this point. What about for coaching staff? Is this like, well, we've been really busy. Now we're going to spend more time double checking, triple checking things. How does that generally go?
Yeah, so you've had time to game plan. You probably worked on this opponent some in the summer, but now the nerves. It's like I always say, nothing compares to knowing the game's sitting out there. And are we ready? But who is the opponent? And, what's so hard in that first game, you really don't know. Especially as we've talked about the changing of the rosters. But who are they? What are they going to do? How are we going to handle it? Are we ready? Are we ready for substitutions? All the myriad things. But I think one of the things the hardest about this is such an unknown with the opponent.
In regards to getting ready for that opponent, I know that throughout the year you've kind of told us, we might take a look. You might have a GA, start working on some film or something like that. But when do you really honestly go all in for that first opponent?
Yeah, you somewhere around the 10-day mark.
Okay.
Unless, like I said, unless there's a real, you almost know you're going to win this game, which is really hard. But let's just say you're one of the biggest of the big, and maybe you were playing somebody that just has, you would go less just to get to work somebody else more, where you could start adding them in week 2, week 3, week 5 or 6, if it was something special. But you're probably going to go about 10 days out, because here's the thing you want to do, and I was telling this to a coach 2 days ago. 2 Mondays and 2 Thursdays. 2 Mondays and 2 Thursdays. Well, what does that mean? That means we're going to have a normal Sunday. You're going to get a day off in there, wherever that is. And then we're going to have Monday. What is Monday? Monday is introing the opponent. Well, you also had all this camp. Let's do it again. Then let's go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is what? That's all the checks, all the special teams, all the walkthrough, because the day before is just less. It's got, now for me it was a really serious walkthrough, but everything's off the sideline. There's no real run through. Thursdays you still have helmets on. Now, some people still might wear shoulder pads on a Thursday, 2 days out, maybe early. We didn't, but early you might. But we didn't. Maybe one of those Thursdays you might wear some shells. But, it's just the mental is so critical right now going in.
What about a position of need? You're thin at that position. You've got one guy you feel really, really good about. How are you handling workload with those types of groups?
Yeah, I think for all those things, the workload is something you've been really trying to do a good job of. Remember, we had to factor in OTAs. We had to factor in running. We had to factor in, is there just – I think for everybody, you got a soft tissue worry. Is there a hamstring? Is there a groin that we've just worked so much? How much have we been on the turf versus the grass? How much have we been outside? What's the heat been, which has been awful? And then you go to how many of these guys that have indoors. But literally everything you can factor in. Now, we start thinking about what's our travel. What is this? This is a first game travel. So I was talking to Ron Corson, my buddy from Georgia, longtime assistant AD, and he was in town Saturday, and he was talking about, them getting ready for their mock. I think they were going to the hotel. And if money's not an object, we did it. We just didn't stay at the hotel. I might have even done that one time, like early on my first, we went and stayed at the hotel because we just hadn't done it in 2 years. And I said, look, we just got to do this. But everything I can do, because, you go off, you go to the hotel, what's that like? What's your actions at this hotel? This is total business. Who's the roommate going to be? Is that somebody that's going to try and stay up all night or something? I'm trying to control every single thing, because that's when you get these outcomes. You're like, now why did this guy not perform? We don't get a do-over. We'll play the next week, but there's no do-over for this game. So I'm trying to control every facet. Is the food right? What's the day before the game? You got to think about all that.
Now, I'm not going total black helicopter here, but there's interesting ways that certain teams have been known to try to get a competitive advantage. Food. How are you handling food?
You know, I'll be honest, and I'm kind of, you could tell I would obviously worry about everything. So
Yeah.
I don't know that was one I did worry about. Now I did, let's just say we're at Marshall, championship game at Marshall. We're going to have a walkthrough inside. And I've told y'all the stories about my one bad experience on an outside walkthrough where somebody happened to be sitting up there watching our whole walkthrough. Day of the game. So we're going to Marshall. Camera. Just happens to be sit there. What do they tell you? Well, they don't work. What do I do? Jacket. Jacket. You know, I mean, everybody else is having a walkthrough. I'm looking.
They don't work while they're still up there.
I got Xavier Robinson going around looking. I got the police looking. I mean, we just, as we say, love and warn is not love. So, so to the food, I think the big thing, though, is just making sure they're getting what they need the night before, plenty of carbs, plenty to eat. What's the timing the next day? You mean you've worked all this out and you've practiced it in the summer?
Well, it's not as bad as having a GA from another school standing in the food fair parking lot across at UAB taking video of your practices.
Right. No, that's not as bad.
Well, we'll leave that school
Yes.
nameless, but
Yes.
I do remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that happened.
Well, that's when you get paranoid.
Yeah.
Like, why are you paranoid? Because we've seen this happen.
Yeah.
We've dealt with it, and then you're like, oh, you're just an idiot. No, they have our place. So, it makes you
You're
a
telling
bigger.
me it was not Connor Salians that came up with the original idea to go.
No, it's been around
and
a while,
spy
hasn't
on
it, Coach?
Maybe it's been around a while. I mean, at worst, they were sitting there taking notes. Now they go, shh.
Well, now you got coaches buying tickets in high school, just going to the game and blatantly videoing it on their iPhones.
And always in high school, you've been able to go watch an opponent.
Sure.
You just couldn't film it.
Right. But
Couldn't
now,
film.
because of technology, it's real easy.
We'd be playing some opponent, and I'd look across, and I still remember this happened at Prattville. We'd look over, and there's a guy in the middle, and he's got the gear on from the other team. All of a sudden, here comes a policeman, walks down,
Taps him.
and confiscates his camera.
I love it.
I love that. I'm like, not only you dumb, you're real dumb, and we've got your camera.
And back in the good old days, what are you asking? Turn off your notepad, sir. I need to see that notepad.
I remember we played Daphne in the state championship game.
I remember Daphne whipped y'all, didn't they?
They whipped us one time.
Daphne, was that the
We whipped
TJ
him.
Yeldon Thunder and Lightning?
No, we won that game. This was the year after Roman Harper left, where we led the whole game, and this is no joke. Steve Savarese.
Bad coaching at the last of the game.
Are you gonna let me tell the story or not?
No, I was just curious. You said that we led most of the game.
Yes, we should have won
if there
the
was
game.
like
Thank
a
you.
bad decision.
We should have won.
Coach Savarese is coaching there.
He's coaching.
He ran circles around you.
He's coaching. One of my coaches, young coaches, come down and says, "Coach, one of Daphne's coaches stole our notes." I'm like, "Come on, stole our notes from a book." So that summer, we get beat 17-14. We're having the Alabama-Mississippi game. This coach ends up becoming a head coach himself later on. Says, "Boy, I got you in our game." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Oh, I got all y'all's notes from the game." I said, "Well, you're gonna claim it at least,
Yeah, at least he claimed it.
Now, where did he get the notes?
They were just what was laying up there, all the stuff we had written down, our play. I don't know what he really got,
So what did Bill Clark enact from that point on to make sure that never happened again?
Well, it's just those things. It's like when you think they're doing it, they are. When you think they might do it, they will.
So did you ever go all digital before you left UAB with your playbook, or was it still?
No,
old school?
it was still, we had digital. We didn't have, we quit doing many hard copies of all the stuff. Yeah, we just,
Was it mainly for security or just because of convenience?
security, a lot of security. I just didn't like laying around, and it was convenient too, but it was kind of a both.
And this kind of goes, if you're trying to break out something exotic and you want to make sure, let's just say offensively, you want to make sure that word doesn't get out.
Right.
Are you sequestering just those involved on the offensive side of the ball to try to limit how many loose lips that could potentially get that information out there?
Offenses too.
Yeah,
like a big wholesale.
Right. Are you allowing defensive, other position players to go in there, witness it?
No.
No.
But, here's the thing, and this is, guys, you're talking about the mind of a coach. Imagine the scout teams over there.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. Are they disgruntled? Is there a disgruntled player?
Oh, that's good. That's a good point.
Because here's the deal. Used to, they couldn't get to him.
Right.
I mean, how would they go? How could they get to him? Were they going to call him on the payphone in the dorm or whatever?
Right.
I mean, now he's out there. Let's say his former teammate at his high school is on the same team. I mean, who knows? Those were the things we talked about all the time. And all you can do is say, guys, look, every piece of information for us is vital. Every piece of information. I mean, go to an NFL deal, and their shredded documents go into a locked. Y'all seen these trash cans with locks on them.
Yep.
You know, it's just industrial sabotage.
Yep.
It's the same theories. And, of course, with your players. So I was just constantly talking about don't think if your high school coach who has not called you all year calls you and says, hey, what are y'all doing this week? You can't imagine how many times that would happen. Where a coach – and we would see this a lot. We would play so many guys who had been Alabama coaches who went to – now, and this sounds bad. But he's an Alabama coach, so when he's got that Alabama shirt on, he's loved, right? He goes into high school in Auburn. They're going to stop what they're doing. They're going to give him – well, he's Coach Jones here who coaches Alabama. He's the best of the best. Then all of a sudden he goes over to another school, a smaller school. Well, they still know him as Coach Jones from Alabama, and he calls up that high school coach who's his buddy because he recruited him. He got one of his players, and he says, man, what is UAB doing this week? Why don't you go watch practice? And what does he want to do? He wants to be good to the guy that he knew, which when he would call up that week, I'd be like, no. You know, it would just be when a guy you've never talked to shows up. When a guy – and that's what I would explain to the players. You know, I don't care if it's your head coach that you love. Don't give our secrets away. Now, after the game, and you can tell them how you're doing. You can tell them we're looking good. You could tell me, you know, we don't need to go. Our starting quarterback is injured. We don't need to say that we're running 12 personnel this week and we've been in 10. I mean, just think about it. 99 out of 100 is harmless. 99 out of 100, he's just checking on you. So you just got to hope that they're smart enough to know these things. But when you think, I just say, how much have you invested in this as a team? And that's why I think the team concept for me was always everything. You know, less about are you starting, more about the team. You know, and so obviously that can be hard because you're going to get disgruntled players. Can you protect the secrets, whatever they may be? Depth chart, plays, whatever.
You're talking about being smart. Smart Bank, great place for our listeners to go and do all their banking.
Yeah, obviously we talk about Smart Bank every week, and just once again, people. I say it all the time, all about the people. Our guys at Smart Bank, from Lee Smith, the president, all the way down. From the top to the bottom, they're going to know who you are. They're going to treat you right. All the amenities of a big bank with all the small bank feeling.
All right, Coach, I wanted to ask you about Alabama. Alabama names its starting quarterback. It's Keelan Russell.
Yep.
Doesn't really surprise many of us because we thought from day one, even back in the spring, that he was going to be the guy ultimately to be QB1. This last week, I was told that it was not so much that Austin Mack lost the job. It was the fact that Keelan Russell outperformed him, had an exceptional week of practice. This was the quote that I wanted to get your comment on. This person told me, Mack has the ability to be all SEC. Russell will be all SEC.
That's a pretty strong statement. You know, and that's what we're looking for. Ability versus production. I mean, it's really what it is. And you got all those guys that are, and that's the hardest part is to say, and I've told y'all this so many times, who was he with? You know, he threw one up, and Johnny went up over 2 DBs and took it from him and went 90 yards. Well, his stat says
they threw a 99-yard touchdown, but it was the wide receiver.
The wide receiver, or he threw a screen that went 9. I mean, you've got to factor all that. Now, I can't take that away from him. You know, he got it up there to him. But you're looking for every factor, but there are those guys that are game, you know, and especially at that position. They're cool, they're calm, they get the input, you know, and then you're trying to put them in these situations. Hey, you're down. What do you do? It's a 2-minute drive. What do you do? And those 2-minute drives that we try and create are so good, especially when you're putting that guy, he's with the 2s and here's the 1s. And he ain't getting all the blocking. He's getting it out. He's not taking sacks. That's a cumulative body of work. And that's really all you can go. What can you go on? You know, and so I always have a question when it's those guys. And I was asking one of the coaches Saturday after scrimmage. He said, I got one that can really run. I said, so you creating a package for him? I mean, he's true 4-4, he says. He's not the starter, but you start creating a package where you get him in, to just and get him some game experience. Doesn't have to be a lot of snaps, but can you give him some game experience? And then there's people out there that's like, no way. I'm only going to put this guy in if all hell breaks loose type deal. So just really all the thoughts that go into that and what's the team's mind. And have you done enough to show them who it should be? Because they're going to get their own opinions as well.
If you're mitigating some of that inexperience for a guy like Keelan Russell, describe to our listeners why having a dual threat quarterback with his kind of athletic ability can help do that with the offensive line and some of the other question marks they have going in.
Yeah, I think it just opens up so many things. Now sometimes does that create some problems where they won't sit in the pocket or whatever maybe, but I think athleticism is, and what we're seeing now is so many more quarterbacks that are athletes. And they don't have to be 4.40s, but they stay alive. They can run the ball some. We got a rush and they get out of their lanes and everybody drops out and he can go get the first and slide. But I think, who is this guy? What does he add to the offense? What does he do when it breaks down? Can he feel the guy here? The tackles got beat. Can he spin out of that? How is he with ball security? I mean, that's the one who does not turn the ball over. We had this talk about this with UAB last year, with Coach Mortensen, who I got to see the other night. They had the really talented kid who'd make a throw, and Leonard Ewart, all those games, I didn't see a lot, but every time I'd see him, he was making the best throw you've ever seen. The next thing I know, he was throwing one right to somebody. And you're like, I don't care how talented they are. If they can't protect the football, I'm looking for somebody else.
In regards to how important that is to make sure you don't lose the locker room, because I know factions are made throughout camp. You got friends, you got roommates, you got all these type people. I mean, how big is that to make sure that the quarterback coach, his input with the head coach to make sure that everything in that locker room is up to par as you get ready for kickoff? Yeah,
and I think that a lot of that is you're trying to communicate it and you're trying to make sure they're in there in the right opportune moments to see. And, as a coach, you would love it to just be, we know who it is. We know who it is. Everybody in the locker room knows. All the fans know. That makes our job easier. Now, the problem is there's two problems. One, they're both really good. Well, that's not a terrible problem. It's a political problem, but it's not a terrible problem because, hey, I got two good answers. If something happens to one, as long as I can handle it, but it's not going to be easy. And that's why I say when you got two really good ones, you try and find out some stuff for that other one. Because what other position do you not play, folks? Besides quarterback. I know O-line, you try and keep a lot of the same guy, but quarterback's the most. The problem is when they're both average. Like, oh, crap. Neither one is standing out, and there's a reason. Neither one are great. So, that's the problem you don't want to have.
Coach, I know this was never a problem for you, but I can see it being a problem with some coaches, for some coaches, especially this day and age. Wide receiver. As we know, wide receivers, at times they can be divas, as Damian, a former college wide receiver. They need a lot.
Yep.
They need a lot. Lot of
Does he still need a lot?
Yeah.
Big time, even around the office.
Kid gloves, you got to handle those guys with. Production, it's all about me, how many targets. But in all seriousness, keeping those guys happy because you've got rosters like at Texas, whether it's Cam Coleman and Wingo or others, you got multiple talents out there. They want the football. How tough is that for some of these guys that have promised a certain amount? Or
that's where you get, and that's where you get the problems. Some recruiter promised him. Wasn't the coordinator, wasn't the head coach, but the position coach came in there and said, man, we're going to throw it to you. We're going to get it to you. And I think that, once again, how do we communicate this to a guy? And let's just make sure you understand what makes this guy good is he wants the ball. He wants the ball in those moments. Give it to me when everybody's looking at me and 100,000 people are saying, and they even may know it's going to me. That's what makes him good. So you don't want to steal that from him. You want to take his passion from him, but he's got to be able to play within the concept of the team. Once again, I talked about that earlier. And that was just on our lark of people trying to come in there and get your stuff, but that team concept and the team is important, and what can I do to help the team? But that's what you're looking for in recruiting. Is this guy really that guy that can handle these things, or is that the asterisk by him? He's talented. And I think that's what happens sometimes when you see a guy and like, well, how did this guy end up here? Maybe he didn't have that part of it. The be able to play within the confines of a team. Or you said, and then the other way is, we're going to get this guy and we got to mold him and hope we can get him to that spot. Of course, we've got that with receivers so much because it's just, I want the ball. I want the ball. I need the ball. And that's worked for them in the past, and they've won games for their team like that. So it's got to all fit.
Does NIL help with the molding now?
Probably when you can say, you're getting paid no matter what, and we're going to start taking some money away if you do certain things. I mean, that's the ones that are smart, like, okay, we're going to pay you, well, then we got punishment. We got penalties.
Yeah, I mean, because even these backups in the SEC that just failed to win the jobs that were announced over the weekend, they're still making at least $500,000 a year to be a backup.
Oh, I got one for y'all.
All right, before you tell us that.
Okay, I got a scoop for y'all. Go ahead.
I want to hear the scoop, but I want to talk about Webb Concrete and Building Supplies, a wonderful sponsor that's very close to your heart.
Yeah, obviously, Phil and those guys, Webb Concrete and Building Supplies, Jacob Clark in the Pell City branch doing the flooring, but 8 locations, do it all, commercial, home, whatever you need for your building. Webb Concrete and Building Supplies.
And don't forget about our brand new sponsor, McSweeney up in Pell City. Those guys have come on board this year as a great sponsor of the Bill Clark Show.
And I always have to read as I'm learning. McSweeney Chrysler Dodge Jeep. Secondly, Ram Fleet and Commercial. These are fleet and commercial. They handle the leasing and the finance in-house. They have pre-owned options. You can drop your truck off. You can borrow one to help you get through. It's just a really neat deal. They got all kind of cars there, but their fleet's what we're really looking at to get out, and it's right there in Pell City.
All right. So did I understand that you're going to give us a scoop?
This may be a scoop, may not to be you. What's the highest NIL that y'all know of in the country?
Ooh. What's Mensa's north of 5?
I'm talking about as a team.
Oh, as a team.
Oh, as a team, I would say the one that I have heard has been LSU, and that is north of $50 million.
We'll say $51 million.
Now, this was a behind the scenes that Oregon is excess of $70 million. I heard this last night.
I believe it. If you probably add in some of those shoe deals that individual players
Phil Knight's gone all in.
From my understanding.
Also we're going to have this guy on the show. Guy's named John Neal.
Yeah.
Remember that name? John was coached me 17, 18.
Yep.
Long-time Oregon assistant, is writing a book about behind the scenes of Oregon. We're going to do a little foreword for him. I just got the copy last night before it gets released. So I don't want to say too much about it, but that's a behind the scenes scoop from John Neal.
$70 million. Wow.
Wow.
How's it sustainable? We say this all the time.
That's why Dan Lanning's like, hey.
I mean, you got LSU going north of $50 million.
Right.
And now they're trying to add NFL players, and they openly say we're probably going to have to add another 3 to 4 million based on these kids.
I've got to say this is us speculating. We think it is, but that's what we were told.
Well, that's why Dan Lanning don't want to run anybody off. You got $70 million locked up with those cats. That's probably somebody who's.
Let me ask you a question. Okay. You have talked about on this show from day one how much pressure you guys feel every single Saturday that you take the field. If you had a $53 million payroll on your roster, how much more pressure could you endure knowing that you have got to perform? I mean, there's pressures already there, but now that you got a $53 million payroll behind you that you are expected now because of that amount of money?
I can't even imagine it. I just can't. Here's what I'm saying. I can't imagine feeling more pressure than I put on myself. Just how I felt every game. And like I said, this was not a debilitating, it was a weird deal. It's not where you can't function. You're functioning at a really high level, but you're talking about wearing on you because you got just this big gorilla on top of you, and you just keep adding man. Now, for me,
slept, how long did you sleep? Like 2-3 hours a night, maybe?
Yeah. I mean,
what would it be now?
I don't know. Could I feel more pressure? Because That, and I've said that so many times. I knew exactly what went into the wins, the losses, like I said, you're just teetering. And, especially when you think, what if we did it again? What if we lost 2 in a row? I told you Justin Kraft said, I bet on you every time you lost. You never lost. I said, I don't know if that's true or not, but he said, I'm just telling you. But I know how I felt after a loss. Now, granted, you're going to get the best of me and us, but I just wanted to constantly keep that. And I think that's that feeling of you can't enjoy the wins because you have to be this person to do that. Everybody's got, this is my favorite thing now, my coaches that are coaching high school or college.
Yeah.
But when they go be the head coach and they're like, I had no idea. Coach. I'm like, no, I know you didn't. No, coach. I had no.
Just the pressure.
Just the pressure.
Yeah. Is that like one of your boys coming up to you now that they're grown and being like, Dad, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is.
Now they have kids of their own. I'm sorry.
And I try. So what? And I tell these coaches all the time. I said the other day to one, I was like, no, you've got to imprint that on them.
Yeah.
Like I always said, seniors, they got another year. You don't.
Yeah.
You better make them feel it.
What a great edition of the Bill Clark Show. We have got kickoff coming up this weekend. We have got major Power 4 programs will be kicking off. And, of course, next week we've got Alabama, Auburn, UAB, everybody involved. Another great edition of the Bill Clark Show. Join us each and every Thursday night right here on the Bill Clark Show. You can watch it on YouTube. You can also download it and listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. For Damian Mitchell, Landrum Roberts, Coach Bill Clark, I'm Pat Smith. And for Jimmy Lee and the great people there at Buffalo Rock and Dr. Pepper, thank you for your fine sponsorship. This has been the Bill Clark Show here on Jocks.
The Bill Clark Show is brought to you by South Trust Bank.